Well, first I just get everyone going, because you've just come back from lunch, you've probably had like a whole bunch of sessions today and you're probably really tired. So we'll just get some hands in the air and just work out who are designers and who are developers. Show me the designers. Woo! Go on, make some noise. Come on. Woo! Who are the developers? Come on. Bring it up. Bring it up. Come on. Well,
so you're the designer?
Yeah. Maybe you have to guess what I am. Hold on a second.
Maybe.
So anyway, I just wanted to start today with getting some relevance and perspective for you, because you've probably been sitting in these technical presentations or theoretical discussions which really sort of talk about the technology, and some people have actually shown you what's involved with the technology and how the tools come together. This is actually pretty good, I think. So the idea here is that what we're going to show to you is the workflow, the process. How do you guys join together? This is in the room and the developers in the room, and get them talking to each other. They've probably never seen each other, and for the first time you've got an opportunity, and for the first time you've got tools around that opportunity to start being able to coordinate an activity together. As you've seen with the initial presentation and the keynote, there was that egg where it was crushed by the developers and being able to implement your beautiful vision and ideas. And that's something, as a developer myself, I'm confronted with most of the time. So essentially I'm always trying to find ways that the tools and the technology for customers can represent the ideas which they're trying to implement. So the idea there is that we are going to show you some real-world examples and just be able to give you a taste or an idea of how to get that interaction going, almost there. So I'm just getting my presentation up and running. And the whole concept is that of having the designer developer in the room is they have a different type of conversation here. I'm turning full screen. So eventually when it gets there. So in showing your hands, you kind of identify with this sort of personality. You've kind of got like the designer guy, and he's often saying things like Photoshop, Illustrator. He's coming up with like brands and gradients, and he's around the office screaming his head off because he's got a fun job and may look like that. Where you got Chicken Lips over here, who's basically got source and framework. He's talking NBC, and he's damn those news, blah. So he's spending a lot of time trying to come to terms with the technology and make it work for everybody. Well, what is the workflow all about? It's simply, you've been told it's like tool and tool, shaking hands and working together. But in reality, we know that your day job is really about having people and process come together, trying to make the designers in the room talk with the developers at the same time. So the opportunity here is that we're trying to, as a designer, engage the user. We're trying to be able to establish an emotional connection with them and be able to reach out to them through messaging and branding and visualization and goddamn animation. Like, everyone's got an animation framework, including the Apple guys. So what the developer's thinking about is this traditional world of engaging their workflow. So they've got ways of doing that through interaction design. How does the door open? Does it swing forward? Does it swing back? Does the button push it? What's it meant to do? So there's also some sort of information architecture boiling around that, because they're trying to express the data that we've got. So in traditional organizations, we've got a bit of CRM, a bit of ERP, the data. What do you want? What do you want? How do you want to see it? So we've got this whole new opportunity. So at the end of the day, we still have to deliver an application that has functionality, it's got process, and it's data-driven. So the opportunity you guys have is this unified view. The ability to put something together that speaks to the customer, that draws all of that information and goodness from the back end and represent it in a way that's comfortable and meaningful and on message to your users. So the big problem with that in terms of building these applications is really around creativity. And you heard Brad at the start say your craft, the skills. And the problem with that is that it's got a timeline of its own. If you've ever sat down and tried to come up with an idea and you pace it around the floor going, I've got that idea. It takes time. So the issue here is that Expression Blend is now this blank canvas. So to me, I'm scared because it's just this entirely blank canvas to which I have to introduce new functionality. So we've got the tools. we've got the ability to have a broad palette for delivering this experiences and applications. However, we also have the reach to be able to touch Mac, touch PC, and now the choice. So we can choose between a web, we can choose between a full-blown desktop application. So I'm about to hand over to Mark from Myop. I'm from OmniEffect. My name's Mike Wise, if I didn't mention it. And these guys are going to show you some real-world examples and hopefully give you an idea of how they did their go on the process.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Mike. So my name's Mark Smith, and this is Mark Saylor. We're from MYOB, or Myop. Everybody know who Myop is? Yeah, so we do accounting solutions for both small business and for accountants. We have around 300 people in product development in MYOB. We do around 300 releases per annum as well. So it's a fairly larger scale organisation for Australia anyway. Okay. We've got a...
Oh yeah, it's a good idea.
All right. Okay, so that's us.
So, I mean, the roles.
Yes, I'm the developer manager. I look after all the developers in Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm the one of the visual designers in the Melbourne office, part of the user experience team. Cool. So what we thought we'd do is we'd show you a typical process diagram that gets bandied around in usability circles and in product development circles. And essentially we thought, nah, this is probably too boring and we can simplify this a bit more because no one's going to take this in. So what we thought was we'd represent the developer as the Incredible Hulk, and we bring in the designer as as Spidey. And of course you can tell why Hulk is the developer because he's got like a pocket protector and pens and a shirt pocket. And Spidey of course has the iPod, so he's the cool dude.
The Zoom.
Zoom. Well corrected. So basically, here's our sort of flow chart that we thought is a bit more apt for the way that our product development team has worked in the past in developing software. So a lot of biffo, can't sort of deny that hadn't had a few arguments with developers, and vice versa. But seriously, after we've done a few tests and a few demos ourselves just internally, some research just using WPF, and we were a lot happier after that. And, we're definitely coexisting beautifully after this particular demos that we were doing. So, but just to move on to the real stuff, I'll hand back to Mark.
He's obviously the creative guy. Okay, so how did we approach WPF? We first learned about this technology at PDC03, and we did an internal investigation just to look at how we could use this in some of our products. As you all know, our products are fairly form and grid intensive, and so is WPF appropriate? We think with some of the new interactions we need to bring into our products, that WPF is appropriate. So we really wanted to look into how we could use that in our new releases. And after that investigation, I think we're now starting to try and get it on the roadmap for a few better products. So just to explain our approach, we just need to rewind a little. We've been at this for a while. The first release of our SME product was Best Books on Windows 3.1, and it was around about 16 years ago. And that same code base is with us today. So we've got some an aging code base, and we've really got to bring it along to get it up to some of this new technology. So just to give you an example of some of the things that have served our customers really well, and we now need to move on to some of these newer interactions to keep delighting our customers and giving them a nice product to use. So there's an existing navigation panel that we have, and there's an existing tab control and some of the lists that we have. So we now know that we've got to move on from there.
I was going to say, Mark, just to add to that as well, MYOB products have a lot of grid controls and controls that display data in this sort of line-by-line row format and column format. So it's actually quite a challenge to work out how you can delight customers with controls that, where we have to actually incorporate these controls quite intensively in our products.
Okay, so where do we go from there? Our first foray into better Windows user interfaces was a product called Cache Basics. We used .NET version 1.1 and some Devexpress controls, and we used Flash for some of the interactions we were trying to achieve. what we found was that for our target market, that resulted in a fairly big download for them. There was also a CPU buyout using Flash, and it was a difficult programming model. So there's a few issues with that. Although we're happy with the end result, the product's a good product. I guess one of the things there is there was multiple technologies in one application, and what WPF represents for us is one technology for the application. So just to give you some examples about
this screen is actually the main screen that you see in Cache Basics, and one thing that we wanted to do was just play around with not just having a standard, static rollovers that you see that's so prevalent in a lot of these products. And we were just trying to, even in a small way, try to enhance interactions, make it a little bit more exciting to use. It's an entry-level product, so good point. It's an entry-level product, and it's an entry-level product, and basically, some of the methodologies we put behind this from a design perspective was just to make it look easy to use and simple. So yeah, here's some like little rollovers and stuff that we're trying to do using Flash. Had a lot of issues with it that we'll explain a bit later. But essentially, what you're seeing here, with button 2, button 2, button 2. This is actually the Flash file before it's actually been incorporated into the product. We're just displaying it in IE. But essentially, these buttons get replaced with, actual words. It's like there's an external file that actually then reads into the Flash file itself. But really, it's the animations that we just want to quickly show you on that one.
Okay. So Cache Basics told us that we were on the right path, but there were still some issues in WPF. Once we saw that, in PDC-03, we knew that was the way to go. So just to give you an example of some of the things that we're starting to look at now. We have a point of sale or POS example that we want to show you.
Yep. So, what we were saying before about MYB controls being quite grid heavy, products being grid heavy. This is an example here where we've just tried to blend. Basically, there is no blend or WPF control at the moment. Well, when we were making this, there was no WPF control that would allow us to make a grid control. So we'll just move to a demo just to show you what we've done as a live example. So what we've actually got here is one of the challenges we've had in a lot of our products is to be able to, as a design or user experience team, design the overall sort of like look and feel of a product without sort of like technical limitations that we currently have with the whole relationship with the developer. The designer comes up with a look in Illustrator or Photoshop, hands it over to the developer who then cuts it up, and it doesn't look anything like what you initially intended. Plus, all the interactions and rollovers and things just seem to be hard to actually implement. So the actual external skin here, which I'll just zip back to just this frame here, shows, just looking up the top, blend generated interface, which is what we did in blend here, just the outer frame. Now, because we're missing WPF controls to generate this grid control here, we've got pretty good ones already that are standard WinForm or Devexpress, just third-party type grids that you can buy. And we're using that there. So one of the experiments that we were working on was to see whether or not we could actually combine the two technologies and see whether or not they could coexist.
And that was important for us because a lot of our old code base, we have to bring them along with us. And so we really wanted to validate that you can use both WPF for some of the smarter looking interactions, but then come back to our old code base and reuse that as much as possible. And I think some of the other presenters have talked about that kind of phased or staged approach to taking on WPF, so that's the approach that we're going to take.
So if you saw the earlier shots of our earlier products, this actually excited us quite a bit, this blend product in WPF, because it really enabled someone like myself, just as a graphic designer, to do things a bit like what you're doing in Flash. So it was a really good experience, and working with the developer, you just hand over bits and pieces to them in XAML, which is the XAML code, and he can go off and implement his particular controls that we can't actually have any control over.
Okay, so one of the things I just wanted to point out there, yeah, this was the Devexpress Control, and just how you use that for the developers in the room. There's a little section there where you basically you create a host for the control, and then you add the control to the host, and that's what that piece of code is showing you there. So that's how you do that kind of blending of the two technologies. So for us, the future looks bright. We really think that our users will love this. We think they'll love some of the experiences we'll be able to give them, and we can see how we're going to do it. But I guess there's a transition for us that we have to do both for our products and also for our teams. So I guess now to the heart of the topic, the design and developer workflow. Just take you through our current process. Design's done and then produce a style guide and produce tasks and workflows and personas and things like that. They then put that into a specification and development, QA and technical communication, so the user manuals and help files people have all taken that specification and worked off it, and that creates a real waterfall. So the dev doesn't start normally until a spec's finished by design, all that kind of thing. So it's a fairly traditional workflow. During the investigation, what we found out was that kind of changes a bit. One of our concerns was, does the graphic designer become a bottleneck? If they're working with expression all the time and they've got to produce everything, do they become a bottleneck? In fact, what it becomes is a lot more iterative process, and it kind of frees everybody up, is what we found. So the interaction designers can do their analysis and the wireframes. The graphic designer can produce some of the interactions to support what the interaction designers have come up with. And then the developers can start coding to what comes across in the early WPF, in the early XAML files. The issue for us then is, do we need specs? If you've got this executable prototype that looks and feels exactly how it's going to look, do we actually need a spec? Can everybody realise what comes off there? And we're still debating that within MYB. Yeah, pretty much covered that. Okay.
So essentially, I mean, well, that's just on that slide. What it basically allows each group to do is to do what they do best in semi-isolation. But there's more of a collaborative. You guys handle the UI, you guys handle the code, because essentially we're all working sort of independently in those sort of silos. But we do come together at the end of the project, and it does. The two teams do coexist quite nicely.
Okay, so for us then, the next challenge is moving all of our people along. We've got those 300 staff, and they all have to understand what this means. So training the tools is one of the things we've got to do. They've all got to understand expression. They've got to understand WPF. There's also the products have to be brought along as well. A lot of them in different technologies we use. We have Foxpro, VB6. We've got C++. There's some C#. Java, there's all sorts of stuff, and so you've got to get all of those things into a space where they can actually use this stuff. And so we're going to start trialling that. We're probably going to do it as a component type thing, where we'll start using small components and putting them into our apps, and then gradually increasing the amount of WPF componentry that we're putting in the apps. So once we've brought the technology up to speed, we train our people, iron out some of the process, and then roll out to the rest of our projects. Do you want to handle that one, though? The testing gotchas?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, essentially, as we've found, it's great for prototyping new applications, or at least for usability testing. While we're sort of, what we showed you was in its very early stages, and we're just playing around with the technology, we can see the potential for being able to develop a lot of high-level designs, as we get closer towards final. But actually showing those to customers earlier and being able to make fairly rapid changes as well, rather than feeling like you've locked yourself into a particular design, because it's going to take another 2 weeks to actually go back and unwind and unpick that knitting that you've just actually gone ahead with. So yeah, great on new projects, and basically the last point there, which is about not stable in beta copies. I mean, we've got 500,000 customers on our Premier flagship product. You can't really start going around unloading new technology that sort of is relatively unproven, untested, I suppose, to large customer base. So what we're looking at doing is trying to incorporate this into some smaller projects, as Mark said, some modules, and iteratively actually see if we can incorporate and do more with this technology. But essentially, we're really quite excited by it.
So one of the things that we also were doing during this investigation was comparing Flash and WPF and how they compare. So I'll go through this stuff.
One of the biggest issues we had was CPU blowout with Flash. And I mean, I know we're coming back to Flash, but it's that was the only product at the time that we thought could actually do what we wanted it to do. So you can sort of see here, this is the screen that we showed earlier on. You can see the buttons actually being put in properly here, or the labels have been. But yeah, we had a 30% overhead on the CPU with everything we did with Flash. So we couldn't actually have lots of really nice slow-moving animations or anything moving continuously, because if you did, this would happen. And the actual you actually achieve this by rolling over all the buttons at once, and you just see the CPU overhead just like climbing. So we had to keep things relatively. We had to keep our animations moving and interactions moving back to a stable base position where no animation was happening, and that would bring it down to 0. What we've also got here is we also wanted to add a little bit of bit more interaction into our welcome windows and get rid of that that really average static type of single mouse over type state look and effect. So we again used Flash for this as well, and again we've got another CPU overhead with this, but we can actually show like, sort of defaulted to that earlier, which was not intended, but to show what we were doing there. Other one.
All right.
Yeah, change to set 5. Yeah. So I mean, what you can see up here, there's going to be a little bit of animation happening at the top, and if you roll over the buttons, you just get some nice little interactions and thing, and you can have tooltips popping up. All this can be done by the graphic designer, which is there's some benefits in this actually happening in the design team, because we can sort of like test with customers a lot more rapidly than having to always be going through a developer and coming back to this. So, but yeah, essentially to add new buttons and stuff is quite simple compared to the process of trying to add another button further down the track, with the developer and designers sort of working together. Now, if we can go back to the other. So yeah, so this was the welcome window that we sort of did a little bit of a test on with Blend. So we actually generated this, and you can sort of see here, CPU overhead was almost negligible. And if anything, I'd say the animations are a lot smoother, the interactions are a lot, fluid. This project, actually I should also mention the previous sort of design that we worked on, that point of sale product, that was probably a day's worth of design and implementation. This thing here, that when we put that together, was probably, we were playing around with the software as well. I'm sort of thinking now if we were to do it from scratch, that probably would take only about a day and a half as well, because a lot of our assets already exist, our design assets. We just have to sort of like reformulate them and then take them in to Blend and play around with them. So maybe if we just go to that demo, and you actually can see it earlier on, but we'll just relaunch that WPF welcome window. So you can see like a little bit of animation here, there's a scaling down image, and we've got this really cool thing here that's sort of like spinning around the background. I mean, again, we were just trying to work with stuff that we couldn't do with Flash because we were having all these CPU problems. And absolutely no issue at all. So it's sort of like just quite stable for this particular application. It's quite stable, quite nice to work with, and there was a lot of aha moments going on. It integrates with Visual Studio quite nicely.
So a lot of those developers can produce something like that's really what you're all for.
Basically, just in summary on that, the mixing of the WinForms and the WinForm elements and WP objects is quite important for us, because you're not going to really have graphic designers going around laying out all those forms that we've got in our products. Like we've got heaps of screens in a lot of our products, and so it's unrealistic to just expect a couple of people to be doing that. So you do have a development team behind all this that's going to implement that. So yeah, UX designer, or user experience designer, should I say. Freedom with the UI look, it's great. Targeted interfaces. One thing that, I don't know if a lot of people know much about branding or anything, but yeah, there are interfaces that, we've got different tiers. We've got a fairly entry-level sort of like tier of customer. We've got, sort of a mid-small business type of tier, and we've got accountants that actually use our products as well to actually do practice management. And so you have to be able to design to those markets. It's not just a matter of just, whacking out a form and, putting some graphics on. So it's a Blend actually, and WPF actually allows us to target our interfaces specifically to these users. And the developer, integrating non-UPF controls with a proxy design. What I'm trying to say there is that we can actually be giving them XAML files or WPF files, Blend-generated high-level designs, and they can actually be using those designs in the early concepts that they're coming up with when they're trying to lay out all their forms. Further on down the path, we can actually, as we've further tested our concepts and refined them, we can actually then replace those files relatively easily. So it's actually it's a really nice process to work with. It's not like we're locked into anything. So I'll just go through a quick thing with this particular project that we did with Blend, but basically you can see here, canvas area for controls to be laid out in Visual Studio. We just designed the outside, and then the 1,000 or 20 forms or whatever that would come into this product can get laid out in Visual Studio. This frame here just sort of shows how we sort of sliced up everything. Basically, I used Illustrator in this particular scenario here, and web methodologies as to how you slice up graphics and implement them. So this grid here was actually used as an export out of Illustrator. I don't know if anyone knows how to use that product, but in Blend you can also set up all these grids that actually then overlay each other, and allows you to do resizing as the window resizes, things like that. So it's actually quite a nice tool. That's the workflow that I used for that at that time, but that's when we were using the beta copy. This is an example of like just a typical form design. Again, WPF is all this outside Viso, and the inside Viso is stuff that can be laid out in Visual Studio by a developer or by someone who knows how to use Visual Studio. You can inspect that quite simply.
You can trust developers with what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Again, I've just highlighted these things here. Fairly simple, but with Blend, you can generate your own button templates, and all you have to do is go into Visual Studio and do a replacement on the template, or apply the template to the Microsoft standard simple button, the simple button that's actually in Visual Studio, standard control. So we can actually update the look and feel of our products quite rapidly. Later on down the track, if we think, well, okay, product's looking a bit dated or the market's shifting, we're not sort of locked into all these graphics. We can just do a quick template change. Sort of explained this already. The interaction prototypes. Just one thing that I thought we'd want to show you is like, how do you actually spec up a interaction? How do you say, this animates, this comes up here, this does this, and as you roll over this, all these buttons here, or this area lights up. What we do is show you. I'm actually running out of time, so I'm just going to quickly zip through these things. Maybe we can zip over to the next screen and just load up. We've got. What we've done is we're using video to actually spec up these interactions and to actually show and communicate to our stakeholders in the organisation how things will interact, how things will work. It's actually quite a hard thing to either explain textually or verbally. So this is like one little thing for a point of sale retail product. Very simple. I'll just show you. You can see this thing how it's like just slides up and fades at the same time. Not too easy to do without Blend at the moment. And it's quite slick as how you can actually implement that. Again, like the whole interface itself is Blend designed, or you can design in Blend. Hand over the template to, or the design to a developer to actually implement the grid. But yeah, this area here, that's hard to spec. So that's one way we're sort of like showing timing, how fast this thing would pop up. As I say, a user in a retail environment actually scans a product, that thing would actually pop up and show a product that has been scanned ideally. That's one example. Another example is this is just like a little interface that we were working on for just a product that hasn't really gone anywhere, but you can sort of see things that we've been specking up or prototyping just to show and communicate how possibly we could do different interactions using this product. It's all quite possible to do. Blenden's got 3D capabilities and all these little slide out buttons and panels and things, quite simple to actually put together. It does actually take a while to actually put together in the product itself, as far as you are actually generating a proper prototype. But to actually communicate this as a video using just video editing software, compositing software, you can quickly show stakeholders what we're intending to do. And also, you can show other people, because you don't want to be locked into, from a timing perspective, think, well, I'm the only one that knows how this will actually ultimately play out. I've sort of explained it, but no one's ever going to understand that. You have to show them something like this. So if we go back to, and yeah, so I think this is good. It provides an accurate visual guide to developers. That's, I think, what this sort of process allows us to do. So, I guess just wrapping up, so how's this designer-developer relationship currently looking? I mean, just going back to something that's probably a little less FIFO and a bit more meaningful. What we've got is a user experience team and development team, and this, I guess, circle here represents that iterative process that we were talking about. The whole idea that we can be handing over high-level designs as we're testing them with users to the developer to actually put into the product itself, and then towards the end, we've ultimately ended up with the final product. But we don't have to be giving them the final look and feel immediately. We can sort of be handing that over progressively. The only area where there's probably a little bit of locking horns is data binding. Can really be done in Blender, or it can be done in Visual Studio as well. So it really doesn't matter. It's who's available at the time and the actual process there. I guess our managers will actually decide that who does that. But I'm assuming the developer may ultimately end up doing data binding. But at the same time, because you can do it in Blend, and if we're doing prototypes and testing them in the user experience team, at least we know we can actually do this ourselves if we need to. So that's pretty much a wrap on what we've been talking about. Just got our email addresses there if anyone's interested in getting in contact with us. But we hope you enjoyed what we had to say.
There's a question and answer session after Mike's session. So
yeah. So we'll ask Mike to come back up, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I thought I'd start to explain myself because I just came on stage screaming and trying to get some audience participation. But essentially, as you probably guess, I am a designer. No, I'm a developer. And we'll just make that clear because my experience is basically I'm the classic. I've got an IT degree. I've coded in just about everything from Java to Oracle to C++. So I've been coding in Adobe Flex, so I know the Flash side of things. And I've just got into building with the tool set and with Windows Presentation Foundation. I'm a director of a company, and we're really sort of this new consulting 2.0 type model. The network of contractors are located in Brisbane. So the sorts of things that we currently do is really interact with enterprises and work with enterprise applications, but we pay a particular focus on the user experience. So we're the sort of guys who are coming into an organisation who's got existing enterprise suites that they want to be able to make more interesting to their customers and to their employees at the same time. So what I've been currently doing, what am I busy been doing lately? Well, I've been working with Queensland Rail and another company called George Patterson. And Queensland Rail is pretty obvious. They've got trains, they've got a big train set to play with, and they've got plenty of things to show. And they've got holidays, and they want you to be able to get out on that train set and experience Queensland. However, they're not really good at the whole, well, how do we show how trains are, the trains are boring. And so they needed their marketing partner to come in, and that's George Patterson. So what they wanted to do is basically offer an online multimedia experience. It's like you're on the train, you're going there, you're seeing what Whitsundays is like. And then offer some sort of Web 2 experience where they've got social engagement. People want to be able to tell, gee, I went on this train trip and it's fantastic. I want to tell other people about it. And that, for Queensland Rail, is business. So they want to be able to blog, they want to send postcards, they want to have some sort of 3D interaction and be able to experience what it is like travelling on the train network. they also had to provide a content management system behind that, right? Because there's a whole bunch of brochureware that Queensland Rail has. They've got videos and images and pictures and so on. So the whole problem is this process about trying to get content and concepts and design, which has been built by people, marketing guys, who sit around, drinking lattes and square glasses and that sort of thing, and be able to produce a product which is going to say that. And so the technology is now in front of us, so we're able to be able to get that to go. So it's all about the process and being able to communicate. So there's a complete design side. So you saw with the MYOB guys is that they've been storyboarding, compositioning, being able to do mock-ups so they can communicate internally, what is this thing actually going to look like, so that when the managers get in there and they buy into this idea, they kind of know, yeah, visually it's going to look like this and I'm going to get that, and at the end of the day when I spend all of that money, I'm still going to have a product that I can talk about. The interesting piece is that for the design side, the brand can be realised end-to-end within inside the application. So for MyHub, they still want to be able to push their whole MyHub look and feel, but also have the functionality that MyHub delivers to their customers today. So in the case of Queensland Rail and for George Patterson, they still wanted to have Queensland Rail marketing and messaging all the way through this application. It's still giving an experience. So then they went into the process of creating all the assets, and these are Adobe guys. So they don't know anything about Expression or Microsoft. They just sit there doing line art, they sit there doing scamps and drawings and pictures, and they just run around doing stuff, right? So then comes the development piece, and that's where OmniFX sits in, and we were helping them put together the project infrastructure, giving them the technology, giving them the enablement for being able to deliver such a vision in such a short period of time. So we got into the process of building the assets. So I had to work out a way to be able to integrate people who had just design skills. I just know Illustrator, I just know a particular tool, and I know the keystrokes back to front. But then I need to be able to grab that and put it into something that's going to turn out as something same time, this cyclic process. And so we've realised this technique which is called rigging. And the rigging is basically where I'm able to simply prototype what the application looks like. So you can see what the MYOB guys did was essentially show that vision with a video. And so we were able to do it real time within the process of this project. Once that's completed, and I can essentially code against that completed prototyping process, I can hand it back to the designers and they can fit and finish it and make it look sexy. So rigging is really a process of wireframing and prototyping. It's almost a real-time thing where you can show the flows and the loops within the application, be able to sell the functionality, be able to sell the concept and the vision. Fit and finish is very straightforward. It's like, you've got a big car and a big creamy bumper bar and you just get out there and buffer up because you've done all the work. So it's essentially the same concept that's played out in this world. So how did I decide to utilize the designers in the workflow of creating this monstrous application? I wanted to utilize their existing skill sets. Their existing skill sets are line art and pictures and images, and be able to utilize the existing products. One of the handy things that's out there at the moment, and you'll see a lot of what the tool set is all about, providing this unique XML language for defining look and feel, is that I was able to take Adobe Illustrator and essentially convert it to XAML and being able to bring it directly into the product. So the designers could sit in their tool of choice, which was Illustrator, and they were able to design this vision completely. And then at the end of the day, I can still pull it out. I have to give mention to Mike Swanson. He wrote a beautiful plugin for Adobe Illustrator, and it just exports straight to XAML. So later, once the majority of the assets were inside all of our control, and I was able to program against it, I then allowed them to move into the blend experience. So once I could give them an infrastructure which they could use, the designers could start putting away Illustrator and start getting into blend and utilizing that as a tool set to be able to continue the creation. And I found that that was quite an enjoyable experience for them because the keystrokes are very similar, the similar concepts and shading and all of the other effects that you can achieve that are in there. For the developer, it's a straightforward process. I had to create a project infrastructure. I had to create a way to make the technology work for everybody and provide data access, web services, service-oriented design. I then used a source control system to put smack bang in the middle of everybody so everyone had some common way of sharing all of this goodness. And then finally, my tool of choice is obviously going to be the Visual Studio. So at the end of the day, we still have to build Mr. Potato Head. He doesn't just put himself together. And we have to achieve an application that looks pretty much like that. It's got a 3D world, it's got these Migos running around on it, it's got some dialogues, it's got all of this content happening at once. We, in fact, took this to a trade show and it took me 5 weeks to build. We realized that a large majority of the application itself. But how did I do that? What's the workflow? That's why you're here. You're trying to work out, geez, how do I just get in there and do it? It's really around the file system. It's really around a common repository that you guys can share between each other, and that's the source control system. So this is the way I did it. I essentially put a subversion source control system between them. You can use any other source control system of choice. Subversion's free and it's easy and it just works. It works day one. So essentially, as you see on here, I've just got a directory structure that makes sense to me. I'm the developer. I've got an application. I can write my client. I can have all of the data and entity and SQL interaction and web services and the website and all of the content and the files that make that up go into those directories. So enter the developer. That's me. So off I go. I come into work. And essentially, I fire up my favorite tool. As you remember, I crashed this before. So fire up. And so what I'm going to do is essentially rig out an application so my designers can start building with. And so the concept for this application is really going to be, we're going to call him Migo Man. And it's just going to be a button with a picture, and it's going to be really exciting. And so Visual Studio here has got Windows Presentation Foundation, it's got .NET 3 on here, and I've got Visual Studio 2005. And it's creating the project for me, and it's loading what I normally see as a developer. So the developers in the room get excited. That's really enthusiastic. Woo! Yeah. Meanwhile, this is running, creating a project. Come on. Almost there. Come on. Come on. 2 sausages walk into well. All right, so we've got ourselves a window. We've got ourselves some code, and we've got ourselves a project sitting over here. It's a solution. It's called Migo Man, and what we're going to do is bang on some common controls. We're going to put like a button on there. So I just click on my button on there, and I'm going to create my button. You know, I'm a developer, I don't care. So I'm then going to go over the container. I think there's going to be a canvas or something on there for Migo Man, because I'm going to press this button and this canvas is going to do something interesting, some sort of functionality that I'm dreaming up right now. And so what I'll do is, as a developer, I'll give this some context to myself so I can name it. So it's called button 1 down there. I'm just going to call him BTN. I'm going to call it man. I'm going to call it press me. So I've named it, I've got some sort of reference to it, I'm going to save that, I'm just going to do a quick build. Now what I'm going to do is just bang some code on that. Developers get excited, designers go to sleep. So I'll just go to this and I'll say btn press me. And then I'm going to invoke a method, and I'm going to append to it an event. And then let's make some room here. So this is the process of development. So what I'm going to do is, against that button, I'm going to throw some content. You know, and it's going to be exciting. Migo Man, you press the button, and it's going to do say yo sushi with an exclamation mark and a colon. So I can save that, and now I can press F5. I see that I've got my button, I've got my canvas in there. It's had nothing really exciting. It's very bland. It's just development. I push my button, and I get yo sushi. So, see ya, I'm off. So the developer's done his work. He's come in, he's built his little application, and we've got some sort of application system going. So I've done my bit. What happens on the other side? So the designer, got the time, comes in the morning and essentially gets access to the same source that the developer was using. Now, because the two tools work together and they can see the same projects, the designer has to know that it's going to pick up a specific, open up a specific file and be able to start working with it in expression blend. But at the glue between us is the files and the assets and everything coming together as a part of the workflow. It's how we get the work done. So I'm basically going to give you a demo of that. So as the designer, so I don't really need Visual Studio anymore. As a designer, I'm sort of thinking I've got to do something with that canvas. I think I'm going to, it's Migo Man, I'm considering an idea. So what we have to do is bring in an asset. Because it's pretty bland just having a canvas sitting on there. I'm not going to shade it or do anything. So in this case, what I'm going to show you is that Expression Design works with Adobe Illustrator. And once it's started, I'll pick on a particular file that I've created. So I can create a new document within this tool, 100 pixels wide. If I hold Control and mouse wheel, that allows me to zoom in and out. If I press space, I can then scroll around. That seems quite familiar to the Illustrator people. I can then import. And then I've got an Illustrator file here. It's just called Migo. It's giving me some kind of messaging, but I can see I've got my little Migo there. I can scale him up and move him down. Give him some presence. So there we go, that's my Migo guy. And that's this Migo main application, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm now going to export that. So I'm actually pretty creative. So I'm going to select Migo XAML. I'm going to press save, force replace. And I can get a bit of a preview about what that's going to be like. Now I've got some options over here that I have to be fairly aware and friendly of, so I know what I'm bringing into this application. Essentially I'm going to bring it in as a resource dictionary into Expression. I'm going to select it as a document. I can see that it's a preview there, and just simply press export. Also note that it's going to be a drawing brush, so we're working with line art here, so it's all line art, so we're maintaining the fidelity of the artwork that we originally created. So that's now been saved, I'm done. The next step for me after creating my masterpiece is to be able to now go within the blend and be able to work with the same file, work with the same asset, and bring that in and make this developer application look a bit more interesting. So this is a part of your workflow. This is what the designer's doing physically. So in the mild shop, it will be a very, very similar application. So that's now all saved. I'm now going to go and find Migo Man. As I said, I was going to open the CS Porch file. Blend Words, and it displays to me the Migo Man window, which the developer had, similar view. But now I see the view in my design tool, and I'm quite comfortable with that. Notice that over in the outline it shows that VTM Preston has been set. So what I want to do is now be able to introduce that asset and sort of make this a bit more of a visual experience for someone, because it's just plain ugly. So we can kind of set some nice background colours. I might actually go for a gradient on that. I might decide to make that kind of swirl a bit more, just like that, shaded. I'm now going to select, and I see there's the canvas. So the designer said, or the developer said before that there was a canvas for me to introduce my artwork onto it. So I select project, and now I can add an existing item. Now if you remember, I went from Illustrator, I went to XAML, and now I'm picking up my XAML file and bringing in my Migo. If I go across and select the resources, I can see my Migo is there. And it's the same image. So I can just drag and drop and put him onto the background. So I've been able to migrate my assets directly into a project, be able to edit the project as if I was able to in any other sort of Adobe style tool. And when I go, now the beauty of this is if I push F5 and I build, I, as the designer, see the same outcome, except my outcome's just a hell lot prettier. So that's what the workflow is about. It's about these tools working together, but it's mostly about the people working together. So what you saw right then was essentially a unified project view. So that this project was the thing that was joining us. The interesting bit was it was really the source control that was providing this glue as well and allowing us to bring together the two groups in the room, the two people. That's what it's about. It's about designers and about developers doing something, exchanging and sharing work. And so the idea here as I keep on going is that if you imagine this is the designer and this is the developer, it's kind of like you're checking in and pulling out and checking in and pulling out and checking in and pulling out, and you're getting work done. And this is sort of like a timeline. Don't make me do scope creep. So what's kind of like wrong with that, or what can go wrong? So I'll provide some kind of like quick discussion around that. Well, designers don't get the XML concept. There's a lot of jiggery pokery that sits inside the expression blend that makes it very difficult for them to get their head around. They might actually click that view XAML button and see a lot of detail. They don't get what X colon means in terms of namespaces, and you have to explain continually it's not HTML. So those are the things that they do enjoy. If you find the clever ones in the group, then they're always asking for code assist. So what other attributes can I kind of like send? Now, there's other interesting behaviors that designers won't like, is the cut and paste ability. Within Blend, it's still an emerging tool. If you press cut and paste on a particular file, you kind of destroy the source control mentality. So within my project, I traveled over it was a lot of time trying to get designers into the concept that they have to source control. They've never done such a thing before in their lives. So that getting them to regularly commit and update, not just do bulk updates to the project and not collide on files was an essential part of this trying to work together. The other problem is that if you've got a mixed environment, so you've got XP, Vista, and Mac, trying to make all of those work at once is reasonably a challenge. So I'll just give you a quick demo of what I meant about that code issue. There's me going in. So here I am, and I'm selecting my project, and I've got a window. If I just do copy, and I do paste, which is totally natural for any other designer to do in the world, I press F5 and boom. So that's my continual vein, is explaining to designers that realistically there's a project that you're working against. There's source control, there's actual this .NET framework that's making it become an application, but it's combining all of your artwork together. So I'm pretty short and sweet, and just so you can get you out of the room quick. But in terms of the developers in the room, I really pay a lot of attention to the code place. You can pick up projects there pretty quickly. They're nice and templated, documented, and you can spend a lot of time just picking an application that looks kind of what you want to be able to use that as the place to go. The .NET framework is another great place to go and view. It's kind of like an eye candy site. You can download applications and have a look. The XAML converters are excellent. So there's other tools out there which have got XAML converters around them. XAM 3D is a product that specifically does 3D. So if you don't want to do 3D, you can just sit in XAM 3D and do it. I know that there's plenty of others sort of like Maya and so on. And if you don't really care and you need to get out more and stop playing World of Warcraft, go to youtube.com, because Tobin and Yuzo, I want my YouTube. So have fun with that, and thank you. You can talk to me at michaelwise.omnieffect.com. I've got my card at the front, and I've got a blog. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you to Mark and Mark from Milo, and thank you to you for the conference, and thank you to Microsoft. Sorry, does anyone want to do questions?
Doesn't matter, I'll do another. We'll head off, eh?
Is that a question?
Can designers check in and out in Microsoft Expression Blend?
No. No, there is a inside Visual Studio. There's a plugin you can get.
Source Control Explorer, they just use them.
That's right. Yeah, that was a problem. I used so on the Mac I use Synchro.
Okay.
On the PC I use Tortoise, or SVN client. But Tortoise is the best. And I just trained them how to use Tortoise because it was really simple. So when they got this feel of oh, I'm checking something in and I'm checking it or I'm updating, because it was essentially. I rigged it up first, I hand checked it in, and then a designer got it out. They started working on it with Blend, and then they checked that back in, and then I worked on it again. So it was a cyclical process, and it really was kind of like just walking along together. I was the only developer, and there were 4 to 7 designers behind me. So it was quite an incredible process to have such speed. But the way they work traditionally, so we had a wall of just story cards and vision and ideas and methods and everything that had to be decomposed and translated. And the way to make people work together is kind of give them the same views. We had the tools, and they had the creativity. It was just essentially just making that work as one. And the source control did that too. So it was a good place to start. I think there are other tools, like Team Suite maybe able to do it as well. But you got to hang on. Any other questions from the blind guys or myself?
For Spider-Man, is the Do you think Glenn sort of made you a bit better of a developer, like from a designer's point of view?
I've got a bit of an interest in like the action script anyway, so it did it. Yeah, it did. It is very codey. That is the only criticism I probably have. But you have to understand why that is though. When you start swapping files between Visual Studio and Blend products, it's a natural sort of like thing.
Great. I'll add to that. The fantastic piece for me was that it was one language. So I wasn't writing ECMAScript, ActionScript, and then I was writing Java, and then I was sitting inside Flex, Eclipse, building something. I was actually sitting in .NET C#, Visual Studio, and someone was sitting in Expression Blend. So the homogeneity between the tools was excellent to achieve the productivity we needed between the teams. So it was more or less exploiting that in some way and utilising their skills. Like if they were an illustrator, that's fine, stay there, export it over or bring it in using the tool suite.
Definitely if you're interested though, like as a designer, it's actually pretty cool from that perspective. You do pick up tips from developers, like, and that's actually a nice aspect of it, is that you get to work with, you know, there is no more of that clash. It's like, you know, you can do as little as you want in Blend and then hand it over to the developer, but you can do as much as you wanted and hand it over to the developer, you know what I mean? Like it's,
yeah, I found the experience rewarding because there's things I didn't know that I wouldn't have known. I would be a developer with a designer habit, but I'm not a true designer when you see them at work and what they do in terms of interaction design. So they're not just thinking about it's bright and crispy looking. They're actually thinking about how's the user going to interact and the experience of it. And it's a real discipline.
Was that Queensland Rail, or was that a web application or was that?
It's to be delivered as a web application. You can go to www.itraveller.com.au and it's intended to be a click once application. So it's a 7 meg file that will come down to your machine. You need .NET 3 or Vista running on your machine, and then it runs. Or it can be run online and offline as well. And yeah, they're intending to release it as a full-blown product and for everyone to be able to use. We put it out to Australian Tourism Expo in April. It literally did take us 5 weeks to build that. We had like a huge stand, something about the size of the stage with Migos everywhere, and we had screens with this thing on. We picked up a lot of traffic from that. I think Queensland Rail were very happy with the outcome. Good point. October, maybe September, October. So there's negotiations about how it's going to go forward.
So does it have any forms in it? It's like
Absolutely. The blogging has forms. The searching capability has forms. There is a postcard, send postcards to people that has forms. There's also a website to it, so you can send a postcard to someone. That person can come back to the system and see the postcard on it. Actually, I implemented a piece inside ASP.NET where it renders in a separate thread what the postcard would look like in WPF, submits that back as an image, pushes it back out. So there's high fidelity between each point accessing the system.
I guess what we're getting at there, that if we're trying to differentiate if that's XBAP or a silver.
It can be released as an XBAP, but it was really intended to utilise the full security of the machine.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a click once application.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea is you click on it, it brings a small installable and it starts bringing it down. It automatically checks whether or not you're onto the latest version, and then starts to show.
Probably the last question over there.
Right, yeah, I have a question for the MYOB guys. I was wondering, the fact that WPF doesn't run on anything less than XP Service Pack 2, is that a concern for you guys, or what's the story for people on older versions of Windows?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of follow Microsoft, I guess, in how our support goes for some of those earlier operating systems. I mean, once we start incorporating this stuff, we'll just start upping the minimum requirements. I mean, we'll just have to follow it.
So I guess users aren't forced to upgrade to the newest stuff, are they? So
again, it depends on the markets. If we have a micro business market who may not want to upgrade that much, and so we might not use it in their products, but we might use it in the higher end products until everybody sort of comes up to the right specs. All right. Thanks
That's
very
it.
much.
Thank you very much.
We just wanted to acknowledge our design manager, Kirsten, for facilitating most of this, and also Microsoft for the opportunity to talk. So thanks very much.